self-storage owner or operator looking for service providers to help at your facility? Well, the Storage Business Owners Alliance, also known as the SBOA, has you covered. The SBOA is a premier online hub for connecting self-storage owners and operators to industry-leading products and service providers. We provide one-stop shopping for your business with exclusive offers to save time and money. At the SBOA, we believe by coming together, we help owners and operators grow revenue, gain purchasing power, reduce expenses, improve efficiencies, and increase profitability. We also offer many resources such as our conferences and self-storage unlock webinars to help self-storage owners and operators gain the knowledge needed to become more competitive in the industry. To become an SBOA member or to find out more information, please visit www.thesboa.com today. We can't wait for you to join the Alliance.
Good morning, everyone, and happy Thursday. Thank you for tuning in to another episode of Self-Storage Unlocked, put on by the Storage Business Owners Alliance, better known as the SBOA. For those of you that don't know me, my name is Jessica Johnson. I'm the Vice President of the SBOA, and we are so happy that you've decided to join us today for another educational webinar. Today, we're talking all about the importance of demand and feasibility studies, and I have quite a lineup of speakers and experts in the industry for you today. So a few quick housekeeping items before we dive in and get started. The comment section that you'll see, we've been putting out there, please tell us who you are and where you're from. If you want to interact with us live, type your comments in the comment section. And if you want to ask the speakers live questions while we go through today's presentation, now is your time. The replay of today's session will be available on the SBOA's YouTube channel. So please go to the SBOA's YouTube channel, like and subscribe there. You can watch all of our previous video content and you can be kept up to date on our current content that's coming out. And huge thank you to our partners out there that help us put these webinars on. We could not do it without you guys. So thank you so much to Coast Realty, Universal Storage Group, Becco and Janice, and Black Swan Storage Advisors. So I'm going to get started. I'm going to introduce our panel, and then we are going to dive into some questions and get talking about this topic. It's a really important topic. So first up, I have Henry with us from Becco. Hey, Henry.
Hey, how are you, Jessica?
Good. How are you doing? Thanks for being here today.
Thank you for having us. Appreciate it.
Absolutely. Henry, give me a little bit of background about Becco and how long you've been in the storage industry and what you do for Becco.
So, Becco's been around for quite some time. They've been in the storage industry for well over 25 years. Myself, I've been in the storage industry out of this office here in Connecticut for about good 20 plus years. Between my father and myself, both have worked for Becco for combined probably almost 30 years between the both of us. So had some interesting previous work that I was involved in, and decided, hey, look, self-storage is a great industry, so I might as well get fully invested and dive into it. We actually own a facility as well, and we handle all of the Northeast sales for Becco, as well as, new projects and anything, self-storage related pretty much in the New England area.
Awesome. Well, thanks for that background and thanks for being here today. And we'll bring you back up once we get started. All right. Next, I have Miss Lou from Universal Storage Group. Hey, Lou.
Hi, how are you?
Good. How are you?
I'm so well. Thank you for having me. I'm really excited to be here today.
We're excited to have you. And you guys over at Universal, you guys do a lot of these type of studies. So give me your background and the background of Universal, Lou.
Yeah, so we've been around for a long time, 30 years. I've been with the company for 23. The bulk of these years I've spent on the operations end in multi-property management as an area manager, and just recently joined the sales team, and now working with the consulting clients, doing feasibility studies, and going out to all the shows and having a great time and meeting all you folks. So yeah.
Awesome. Well, thanks so much for being here, Lou. And it's always a pleasure to see you live at the shows. All right. Next up, I have Matt Van Horn from Black Swan Storage Advisors, right? Am I saying that right,
You
Matt?
got it right.
Okay, good. I could never tell if it's got advisors at the end or not. So, Matt, you've been around a long time. Give us your background and what you're doing over at Black Swan.
Yep, this is my 23rd year in the industry. I've now spent half my life in it. I started, as a lot of people in the industry, I started as a storage manager, was that for a year, then was a DM, and then just over the last 23 years, went out on my own, do feasibility studies, consulting, management. I've done it across the U.S. and also been, on the board of the Florida SSA, just like you are, and, done some speaking and a whole bunch of other stuff all the way through. So I've been doing this for quite a while.
Yeah. And Matt, you've got a great weekly newsletter that comes out on Tuesdays, right? Tell me a little bit about that.
Sure. I do a newsletter called Behind the Roll-Up Door, and we kind of touch on a lot of the, try to keep it as current as possible on the industry issues, operations, technology, some of the news, just like what we just had recently with Life being acquired by Extra Space, or at least in the planning stages of that. So we try to, every week put some stuff out there that's actually helpful, more educational than, say, advertising, things like that. And if anybody would like to sign up, it's just the selfstoragenewsletter.com. And we come out, it comes out every week on Tuesday morning.
Awesome. Thanks, Matt. Well, thanks for being here, and I'll bring you back up in just a minute.
Thanks, Jess.
You're welcome. All right. Next up, I have my good buddy, RK from Coast to Coast Realty. And RK is an expert in these studies. RK, how many of them did you do last year, you think?
Probably 52, I think.
Oh, that's a lot. So RK, tell me about your history, how long you've been in storage and what you do with your current company.
So I'm kind of the grandfather of the group here. I think I've been in storage longer than maybe some of you combined. This is going into almost the 40 in storage, so well over 3 decades. I have a consulting business. I'm active in development right now. I'm active in some acquisition work. I manage some stores from an asset management perspective, not from a property management perspective. And I'm very, very pleased and honored that you would include me in your panel today, and hope everybody has a great learning experience, because this is a wonderful forum to share information.
Thank you, RK, and thanks for being here. All right. And last but not least, Miss Sarah Beth Johnson from Universal Storage Group. We've got 2 from USG today, so I'm so honored. Sarah, give us your background.
There's more than just me on the sales team now.
Hey, don't you love it? Growth is good, girl. Growth is good.
So I am Sarah Beth Johnson, and I have been in the storage industry about 11 years now, a little over 8.5, doing the sales part of Universal. I was brought in to work directly with Ann Ballard, the hat lady, and take care of all of the contracts for Universal. Recently, we expanded our sales team to include Lou, and JR does acquisitions just for USG. And not only do we do feasibilities, but we also do consulting, management, design, education, training. So you name it, we kind of encompass all of storage, except for the building part.
Yeah, which is a part, it's an important part, but we'll let the Becco guys, we'll let them take care of that. Well, awesome. Well, thank you for being here. All right, I'm going to bring everybody back up, and we're going to get this thing started. So let the audience know too, we will be asking poll questions throughout today's webinar. They will be in the comments section. If you want to just respond to those polls in the comments section, we appreciate it. So Matt, I'll throw this first one to you. Obviously the first reason we would want to get one of these done is, it might be part of the lending process with the bank. The bank might, I think in most cases these days, is requiring it. So talk me through, like, if I'm getting started, why this is such an important step for a new owner operator looking to build a development or even buy something.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of the banks will require it, but even on top of that, it's just that we have a lot of people that are coming into this industry right now, and I'm sure everybody here is taking phone calls like crazy. I've been, and even if you have done this, it's better to have somebody else look at this from, a non-emotional point of view in terms of going into these markets, looking at what's happening, and giving you an honest assessment before you're going to drop a few $1,000,000 to develop something. It's kind of made out there, especially on social media and maybe even some of the financial publications that, self-storage. I've had people call me, hey, I'm going to put up some garage doors and people are going to move in and I'm going to make some money. Well, there's a little bit of nuance in between, getting your construction loan, building your property, leasing it out, and making some money. I mean, there's a lot that goes in between that. So I think having somebody come in and look at it from, again, a non-emotional attachment, saying, hey, does this look like it makes sense? Does it not? And why is really important for, for the success of your project. I had somebody call me just about a year ago that said, hey, we're dropping 100,000 square feet in the panhandle of Florida. I'm like, okay, well, that's a lot of storage, number one. Number two, has anybody looked at this for you? And they're like, no, we're just going forward with it. I even told them, it's like, look, send it to me. I'll even give it a cursory look. And they we're going forward with it. There's a false sense of security, I think, that's been floating around out there. And I think this will help dispel some of that. So you really get down to, hey, this is what my market is. This is what it's doing. And this is what we will project you will do if you build this, right or wrong. So I think that's really the important part is, spend a little money up front and save yourself potentially millions of dollars if it doesn't look good.
Yeah. Yeah. And talking about the money part, Sarah Beth, I'll put this one over to you because I think you sent this in. I mean, typically a feasibility study is like a fraction of like overall development costs, right? So it's like spend a little, like Matt just said, spend a little bit on the upfront versus, finding out all of these, deviances later and it costing you tens of thousands, if not more of dollars. Talk to me a little bit about that.
Yeah, so many people call us and, kind of like what Matt does. So if somebody finds a piece of land that they're interested in, then I always tell them, send me the address first, because I also have my real estate license, and real estate people want to sell what they need to sell to make the money. It's not so much they're worried about what's going to happen to you on the back end of that deal. So please send us the address. Let us look over the area first and at least tell you if you should spend the money for a feasibility. Because, a lot of times we can go in and say, hey, please just don't put storage here. I mean, I can sit at my desk in Atlanta and tell you there are 10,000 people in the 5-mile radius and you want to build 50,000 square feet. There's already 4 other facilities. Please don't do this. But, as far as the cost is concerned, it is such a fraction. I mean, you're going to spend, a lot of people also have a false sense of how much it costs to build a storage facility. So they come and they're like, oh, I've got $100,000. And I'm in it and I'm like, no.
Times up by 10 and maybe we'll talk.
So, depending upon, how big you want to build and how much, and let's go with $10,000 for an average feasibility study.
Sure.
If you're spending $8, $9, $10 million to build a facility, 10 grand is not that much money to spend to make sure that you have a professional look at it. People on the Facebook sites come up and they have their performas and they're like, well, I did a performa. And I'm like, oh, okay. Can I see it? I'm like, well, you left out your labor. You left out office supplies. You left out, they don't think of everything that it incorporates. So it's well worth the fraction of the cost to have an actual professional do it for you.
Do any of you, any of you share any horror stories that you know of where someone did not do a feasibility or demand study on the front end and ended up maybe having to sell back to the bank, like something egregious happened on the back end? Sarah, I see you shaking your head. I'm sure RK's got a story. Maybe even Henry has one too. So go ahead, Sarah, tell us yours.
We took over a property in a southern state, and he called and he opened, and it was him and his son. They were going to run it. They did not do a feasibility. They did not have anybody that knew self-storage design their facility. It was three-story climate building only. And in 6 months, they leased 6 units.
Oof.
So we came in and we were like, you're going to have to tear down walls. We're going to have to change this unit mix. You've got to add on. And it was like a 20,000 square foot building too. I'm like, you're not going to make any money. They had numerous, I can't remember. We're going to go with, if it was a 20,000 square foot building, like 50, 60, 70, 5x10s, no big units. So we were like, we need to add on, we need to help you. And they're like, well, we're not going to do it. And so I said, well, we'll do our best. And they just sabotaged every last part of it. And they ended up having to sell because they didn't hire professionals to do it. And they hired their best friend to design it. And their best friend doesn't know storage.
Yeah, it's scary and it happens too. Anybody else have a story they want to share? All right, we can move on. I'll share one. I think Carl Toohey was telling this one where something similar happened to an owner in California. They did not check with like the local municipality to see what was already in development in the pipeline. And then lo and behold, they were building simultaneously next to a big competitor, and the big competitor kind of took the market by force over them. And they ended up having to sell back to the bank within, I can't remember the timeline, but it wasn't very long, less than a couple years, if that. So these things are important. Sarah Beth, you mentioned like when in this particular instance, you came in, you had to rip walls out, right unit mix. So Henry, I'm going to send this one over to you because you work with Becco. You guys are looking at site development plans all day, every day, I'm sure. So talk to me on the side of like taking the study and then trying to figure out what the right unit mix is based on what some of this data is telling us.
Sure. Yeah. So, everybody's got a piece of land, right? Everybody's got this piece of land. They got, the great idea. They want to build storage. But, not everybody obviously knows the industry, knows what goes into it. Kind of like, Sarah Beth, you said there's a lot more that goes into it. And, obviously the feasibility study, while nobody has a crystal ball, it kind of does help narrow in on a projected unit mix. And of course,
Sure.
Will people have to make some changes down the road? Possibly, just to go with, the changing of the times. Look, during COVID, kind of things shifted. Small units could have been popular, but then, hey, look, everybody needed to, move out of their basement so their kids can be home and have a home office. So the industry is always shifting, but having that feasibility study really kind of does help at least get you an overall idea of your unit mix and narrow it down to, hey, look, we should have X amount of 10x10s and X amount of 10x20s. And then you can kind of play with it from there with, looking at some demographics and your local competition, things like that.
Yeah, totally agree with that. Thank you for that. Lou, I'll direct this one over to you. And audience, if you have any questions for the speakers, please ask those while we're here live. There's a lot of people that do this first service, right? And some will do it from a desk. There's a lot of data that you can get from some of these softwares that are out there, or you can go walk the market, do an in-person market shop. What do you prefer or suggest people should do, Lou? Is it situational, or do you think like every single one should be, the person should come and walk that market by foot to give a true feasibility study?
Well, at Universal, we really believe in putting boots on the ground and actually doing a physical shop. Sarah Beth always makes the joke that it's like Tinder. What you see online is not actually what you see in person. So, when you're when you're looking on even Google Earth or on their websites, and they have these shiny, beautiful buildings, and then you get there and in person, like look versus online versus what we're actually seeing, and the doors are falling apart and it's moldy, and you gotta like shop and see what the managers are like. Is it a manned property? Is it unmanned? There's a lot of unmanned sites out there right now, and it's close to impossible to get any information on those, doing a desktop study. So, and also just really, is the competition full? Is it not full? Does the market dictate additional covered boat and RV parking? Are we looking at, we really need to add some incubator offices? or like storefront offices with the warehouses in the back. And what is that market calling for, and what's going to fill up? So it's not always a cookie cutter 5x5, 5x10, 10x10, and up the round. It might just really be a specialty market that's looking and needing something specific. So
Yeah.
it's just really, really important, in our opinion, that you actually send people out and you shop the competition and you look at the market and you study the market and really get a feel for what's going on there, things that you just can't see
Yeah.
online.
I saw RK shake his head. Matt shake his head. RK, do you have anything you want to expand on that comment?
Yeah, I'm a firm believer you need boots on the ground. I have examples that if I hadn't been on the ground, there are things that I never would have discovered, or even our team wouldn't have discovered in the due diligence process. One of the things is, though, to know that there's a difference between a market study and a feasibility study. And a lot of people use, and they go out and they think just because there's demand for storage doesn't necessarily mean, in my opinion, that it actually should get built, because it may not financially make sense. And
Sure.
it really isn't until you do the deeper dive and get fully into it that you understand the dynamics. Relative to a unit mix, you can't really put a pro forma package together unless you develop a unit mix. Even though it might be hypothecated, you want to make sure that it's appropriate for the land and what you're suggesting that they build there. Because sometimes clients will come to us and just give us a piece of dirt and say, okay, what should I do with this storage wise? And you may or may not have a multi-story climate control building. You may or may not have accessory buildings. All those things, they have to go into your pro forma, because you have to start somewhere with a number that eventually drives your costs and your revenues, so that you can predict what the returns look like on.
Mm-hmm.
It's important that people understand that they may go out and get a nice market report, which is great. I mean, that's a great place to start. And a market report part of the study. But if it doesn't make financial sense, that's where feasibility meets the road. I saw him shaking his head. I know he's been through this a number of times where people think that it's a great idea, but it just doesn't make any economic sense at the end of the day, because rates may be too low or site costs might be high.
Yeah. And now, RK, I'm going to ask you this because I know you love data a lot. You are like a data geek. Sorry to call you that, but I know you are. And I know you'll proudly say that you are too. So I always love when I hear you talk. You say you always like to triangulate your data as well. You're not going to go to one single source. You're going to gather it from a couple sources. Can you give us some of those samples of some of the softwares and services out there that you make use for that gathering of that data?
Sure, there are 4 or 5 really great companies out there that provide data for storage. I've been an advisor to StoreTrack. They're a phenomenal company, have really great historical rate information and the ability to slice and dice that data, which is really, really important. I've used Yardi in the past, but to me, it's a very expensive product just because of the cost of subscription, and it hasn't always covered all markets across the United States. But it's great data, and they have a great foundation, big financial base with which to gather data. Really important. Radius Plus is out there. That's a very affordable one. They allow you to buy credits, so you can do one-off projects. You don't have to have a subscription. I love Radius Plus. It's a good, solid foundation. They come from the United States, not quite all of them, I don't believe, but they do a great job of it. I own a little tiny piece of a group called Social Explorer. We're in the process of launching in the space. Our niche is really bringing to the forefront incoming housing data. So we can track multifamily and follow the rooftops. And we consider ourselves more of a windshield career. We're looking forward at that rather than the historical background. Then there's some other groups that are out there that provide data. I do believe, as you said, and I like to translate my data, take it from 3 different sources, and you're going to find that there can be some very, very big differences between data from one company to another company because of the way it's gathered, because of the way it's processed. And so you have to really figure out what's the most appropriate for the market. And sometimes that in-person visit will help you. If they show a lot of new rooftops and you go there and it's completely an infill location with no vacant land, where are those new rooftops coming from? Mm-hmm. It's really interesting to look at that data and try and figure out what's real and what's not.
Yeah. So you mentioned Store Track, Radius Plus, Social Explorer, Yardi. Anybody else have any favorite software out there that they suggest people take a look at?
I agree with RK.
Yeah, those are pretty much the main ones.
Okay, cool. All right, let's talk about this. So, if I'm a newer owner and operator coming into the space, or maybe I have a location or two and I'm looking to grow my portfolio, and I'm looking for, there's a lot of people out there that claim to do this service. So, whether they're credible or not, sometimes I don't know. What should, like, if I'm if I'm sourcing this, like, what are some of those key questions that I should be asking? Like, I'll start with this one. Should you ask for a previous feasibility study that they did maybe for another client? RK shaking his head. Like, what's that? What do you coach people on what they should be asking for? Maybe if they choose not to use your service?
I mean, I'll jump in first. Yeah, absolutely. It's one of those things where I don't necessarily give out an example or the, a report that I did for someone else. Those are all confidential. But in terms of, I'll do a feasibility review. I'll bring somebody online like what we're doing right now. I'll walk them through an example report. We'll talk about the process. We'll talk about the different areas, what the bank is looking for, what we're looking for when we're doing it, things like that. I look at all of these, for me personally, as an educational thing first, and then go about doing the business stuff later on if they feel, because everybody should work with whom they feel comfortable with. But self-storage has become so popular over the last, say, 5 or 6 years. It kind of reminds me, I live in Florida, so it kind of reminds me of hurricane season. When a hurricane comes through, all of a sudden everyone's a roofer. And I'm kind of seeing the same type of thing in self-storage where everyone's selling something online. And when times are good, it's very easy. Sometimes even when the markets are really good, it can kind of, Band-Aid mistakes that when things don't go as well, will start to be exposed. And I think it's good that you have, talk to vendors, talk to banks, get the people who research a bit on who you're working with or trying to work with.
Yeah. Can anybody point out, like, I mean, basically all of this is reviewing like the risk versus the reward of the project, right? Is it feasible or not? What are some of those main things? Like, RK, if you get a feasibility study back, like, what's the first page you're turning to? Is there like that sweet spot you like to look at first and then kind of look at other data points from there?
I've always focused really on the financial side of it. The market side of it is fairly easy to me, but the financial side is. So I immediately say, look, if your return threshold is then go see what are. If it's not 15, then return, or for your developers looking for is you're trying to develop to a 7 and it comes in at a 6, well, then feasible to you. It may be feasible to someone else with a lower return threshold, but for your purposes, you're not going to get the returns you look for. One of the I try to do with my clients, I do a lot of things. So it may meet their requirements. Then we say, look, what happens if rates go down? What if costs go up? What if it takes longer to release them? And we go through these different scenarios. Look, where is I willing to take a risk that it will go up, whatever? But I think it's important. And also a little bit different than that, a redacted sample proposal that, or every discussion. I want to know what the deliverable looks like. Exactly. So that, I thought really.
RK, I'm having a little bit of a problem hearing you. It's coming in and out a little bit. I'm sorry.
Anyway, so I just say, use support from someone as a guideline to what you get in the room.
Yeah. How about you, Lou? Is there like a certain page of that feasibility study you're going to go to first? You want to see what came in?
Well, I mean, obviously we're looking at drive-by traffic. You want to have 20,000 or more cars flying by that property every day, going less than 55 miles an hour. You want to see population growth. You want to see a certain income level. Those you want to, kind of like the 10 by 10, I guess, is the benchmark size that we look at in the market. You want to make sure that that's at a certain price point. And then, just putting all the numbers together, like RK was saying, and making sure that it just makes sense, that we can put the proper unit mix out there with the proper size and the pricing, and that they're going to get the correct rate of return on that, and, you know, hit those break-even points, cover their own operational costs and cover their own debt services within an appropriate amount of time, so that they're getting, you know, the proper rate of return on their investment.
Mm-hmm. Sarah Beth, what about you?
Yeah, trying to just, like Lou said, make sure you're going to get the right return. I like to look and see what categories, again, going back to the performa, you know, we do a true 5-year performa. So we actually design the facility for you with the unit mix. We've had 12 National Facility of the Year winners. Ann's designed 7 of them. We take all of the information from the supply and demand. We design the facility unit mix. We do the performa, and we do a true 5-year performa. So we have every line item budgeted out all the way down to paper clips for the next 5 years, along with valuation pages, lease up rates, and so on, that we update throughout the entire process. So did you just get a performa from whoever did your previous feasibility that maybe didn't have all of that information, and maybe were just placeholders because they don't know exactly what it takes to run a facility in Omaha, Nebraska? You know,
Yeah.
did they remember to add the snow removal in? Did they, you know, there's so many different line items that need to be in there. And do they just give you a performa and then leave you? Or, you know, are you allowed to come back if you say, for instance, hit a rock pit? Or like we have a current client who we designed the building, everything was great. We had already heard back from the county, and now the county's like, oh, we're so sorry. There's a floodplain back there that, you know, now you need to move the whole building and everything needs to change. So we're redesigning the building and redoing the performa to make sure we have the right unit mix so that it'll give them the return that they thought they were going to get in the beginning. So is the company doing that for you?
Yeah, for sure. How about you, Henry? You're going to look more into like the zoning stuff, the site analysis, like what that land and that dirt can sustain, right?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we're gonna, you know, look, we always tell people, you know, being an owner myself, look, you got to look at the numbers, right? You got to see where they lead. You got to also know what your cost of construction is, because, you know, for us to build a building in Connecticut, Massachusetts is going to be a lot different than building a building somewhere out in, you know, Ohio or somewhere in the Midwest. So, you know, as well as rental rates, you know, I mean, everything's going to be so different. So, I mean, we really try to look at, you know, one, what maximizing the site with the rentable square footage, but also then, you know, trying to figure out, hey, what's that best unit mix? What's that best, you know, drive up to condition space, and just try to look at the big picture for everybody and get them, you know, the best possible layout for the site.
Yeah.
Henry, do you love that question that you probably get all the time too? So what's the average cost for a climate control building?
Yes,
I love that one.
Yes,
I love that one.
And then you know, and then somebody who, you know, has kind of been out of it for the last, you know, say 3 years, and they come around and say, hey, as you know, you gave me this budget number, you know, I'm kind of running with it. And I was like, well, hey, you know, have you looked at the, you know, cost of HVAC, insulation, buildings, just everything kind of has gone up. So, you know, just to try to stay on top of all these numbers, you know, everyone tries to hold the gun to your head when you give them a budget number, you know, oh, you said $65 a square foot. I said, you know, estimated, you know, I mean, depending on your site, it could be 70, 75, you know, depending on your site work, depending on, you know, a lot of other variables. So yeah, I do like that question.
I that's like the blanketed Facebook question. When I see that, I like cringe. I'm like, like, why are they asking this question again? But they do. So yeah. And every market, every situation, it's situational, right? In a pro forma in Florida, you're not going to have a line item for snow removal, most likely. You know, I would hope not anyway. If we are, I don't know, Armageddon's coming. So we better be planning for other stuff, not self-storage. Or maybe we should plan for self-storage and we can barricade in at the Armageddon. So our case, real quick, go ahead. Somebody saying something?
I was going to say, one of the things that's important is remembering that the feasibility study is one of the first steps in the process, and you don't really necessarily have the construction costs. You don't have your geotech report at that point to understand what the soil conditions are. To Henry's point, there may be very big site costs that are involved. And so where you're at day one with a feasibility study may be entirely different than what it looks like at 9 months down the road, after you've gotten your zoning, after you have all of your third-party reports. The markets have changed during that period of time. So critically important, not only do we start with a feasibility study, but as Henry said, this is just a rough idea of what it is, but what it actually looks like in detail. The Universal Storage Group was making a good point about how the detail needs to come in. The devil is in the details. And that update at final, when you're getting ready to actually write the check and sign the contract, it can be a totally different number. And so it's important that someone update their feasibility study between point A and point B.
Yeah, definitely. Let me ask you this. Somebody asked, an Arcade, what is the incoming housing data platform you mentioned earlier?
So that's a product called Tract IQ from Social Explorer. And really what we've done is we've tracked 60,000 new housing projects across the United States, and we've put them on a map. So it's kind of like a heat map. You can see where they're located. And the larger and the darker the circle, the more the development is. It's just an opportunity to say, okay, a bunch of going on here, and that's a place that you might want to look to prospect for a store. One thing, Jess, that I want to throw out to the group, that I'm a little bit contrary to the group in some ways, because I think of square foot per capita as a demand indicator, and to me that's a metric for supply. It's only a rough guideline of what exists today and what we know may be coming online, but it doesn't really tell you whether there's demand in the unit or not. I opened up 7 stores in Las Vegas with square foot per capita that were almost 3 times the national average. Well, every one of those stores filled up because the demand was there, even though the supply was gaga. My store in Jacksonville has 28 square foot per capita in one of the radiuses, but I'm going to have the only climate control facility. I mean, there's a lot of things that go into. You just can't say because square foot per capita tells you that it's such and such that it is a good idea or a bad idea.
Mm-hmm.
Last thing is you have to update it, because what happens is they use the square foot per capita before their project, and they don't actually opine the numbers and revise them for adding the square footage you're putting in the market, plus any new developments that are coming in. So if you just go and you take the number from StoreTrack or Tract IQ or Radius, and it says, 5.7 square foot per capita, well, that's great as a starting point, but that doesn't include your project, and it doesn't include all the new projects that are potentially coming in.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that is a good point, and that is definitely a critical piece to think of. And I saw, Sarah, that you answered Eric, but I'll put this out there for everybody else too, so they can answer it. Is there such a thing as a lower cost desktop study initially to determine feasibility before jumping into a full-blown study? If so, what is the approximate cost, and which metrics are typically evaluated in that desktop study? Whoever wants to take it can take it.
That's what I like. That's what, when you send us the address, that's what we look at. So,
Okay.
You send me the plot of land, and I will look at the general demographics. I'll look at the incomes and the population, and I'll look at the traffic, and I will run the radius and see if it shows me that any new units are coming online. That doesn't necessarily mean it's always correct, and you do have to pull permits. And then I'll look at the competitors in the 5 mile and just kind of pick some of the lower end ones and some of the higher end ones and see what their rates are. And sometimes you can tell from the websites how, their occupancy or general occupancy, obviously, if it says 1 left or reserve or whatever. Mm-hmm. And that can give you an idea if you should move forward or not. I mean, obviously, if every single number is just so way out there, just so off whack, I can't always give you a good, I can't always give you a hard no. If it was our money, would we spend it for a feasibility on this site? No. But the yeses are you have to dive in and you have to get more information. But I'd rather do that and give you our general opinion if it was our money than have you give me, $10,000-$15,000 for a feasibility study that's not going to move forward. But we
Yeah.
also do the supply and demand study. So if we give you that, maybe you should look further into this one. Then if the supply and demand study doesn't come back favorable or it comes back on the fence, then you only pay for that part. No harm, no foul. We're out. We're not going to charge you for the whole study. And we're not
Gotcha.
going to complete the rest of the study.
So what on average is that costing for you to take kind of like that initial look, Sarah Beth?
I do that for free.
Oh, that's nice of you.
I'm not going to make you spend, our feasibility studies are a little bit more than everybody else's, but it also includes our design services. And, we tell you where you should put your security and where your camera should go and what gate systems you should use. And, we put you in contact with all the vendors and we keep updating everything, our performance and so on. So they are a little bit more in depth. As the architect fee alone that you save makes up for the difference in our cost versus somebody else's. But then the first part, the supply and demand part, is $5,000 plus travel. So, like I said, if that doesn't come back favorable, then that's all you're out. And, we move on to the next one and go from
We
there.
also have a large panel of folks on our team that once all of this is complete, everybody sits down in the conference room and looks at it and gives their opinion. So, a lot of different minds. You might have 3 people that say, absolutely not, no way. And another 3 that say, yeah, this is great, and we duke it out. So it's kind of a great part to have all these different great minds at work, kind of picking the whole thing apart for the client to make sure. And sometimes we come out on the fence, right, Sarah? So we'll call the client in and say, hey, half of us think this is great. Half of us think probably not so much. And maybe we should just talk about this a little bit more. So we kind of involve everybody, and that's just a part of the process for us.
Gotcha. We have a question from John Keeney. He's asking, what are the prevailing national or regional estimates of square foot per capita that you're using as a ballpark in 2023? Anyone?
The almanac.
There you go. I got my copy. Yes, the almanac is your friend.
Yep. Call Poppy. Get the almanac.
Good starting point, right? Great starting point. So what
but
is that
like our case
Sarah?
said, it doesn't always go by that though. I mean, the almanac can say that they need 10 square feet per capita, but then, you've got 20 square feet per capita, but everybody's full. And, there's a wait list at 5 of the facilities. Well, then, it's a feel thing, and it's a knowledge thing, and an experience thing that comes into play at that point.
Yeah. For sure.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, remember some of these things when we're talking about square foot per capita, these are averages of what, should be happening or might be happening, not exactly what is happening. And that's why, we talk about some of the virtual stuff. And I understand that, we don't necessarily want to spend this to send somebody out there, but a lot of times you really don't know until you get out there and start looking and digging into what the market's going on. I mean, just as an example, if, you're using some of these softwares, which are great, but they don't always have all the data in there. And sometimes all the data is not available for them to put in there. I was just in a municipality yesterday, walked in, knew of one project that was going into a market. And then I find out from one of the planners, it's like, oh, wait, we've got 2 more coming too. Now, they may not necessarily be in my radius, and I've got now put an information request in. But, there was another one too, another municipality I walked into, and this one wasn't in any of the databases, and it could be in my market. And it was the planner was nice enough to let me in there, look at the plans and everything else. But you need to do some digging before. Don't just trust the spreadsheet part of it. You have to go out there and look at some stuff.
Well, and what Matt's saying too, you also have to look at the class of the facility.
True.
So I am not going to put my Class A facility that I'm designing. I really don't care about your Class C facility that is a dog track going up against mine. You're not a competitor, actually. And that's, again, the Tinder. You have to go see them to make sure what class they are so that you know what's going up against your facility.
Yeah, definitely. Absolutely. Here's a question here from AJ. do you have a tiered pricing model for smaller facilities or facilities only looking for a small expansion like 10,000 square feet? Or is it one cost no matter what?
Jess, I'll take that one. From my perspective, I think it's pretty much one cost because the same amount of work goes into a 20,000 footer almost as a 50 or a 75,000 footer. If someone is talking about building less than 10,000 square feet, that's probably for a brand new facility very small, and it's not going to scale very well from a return perspective. I think that others have mentioned that bulk is needed. Now, if it's an unmanned facility, maybe you can get by with it. But if you're only going to build less than 10,000 feet, your risk is so small at that point that I don't even know if you would actually do a feasibility. I wouldn't take the work. I would refer it out and say, you know what, your risk is so small, just go ahead and do it. But if you're talking about a scaled project, then it's definitely worthwhile. And AJ, I just charge one charge. I have one charge for my desk study. If that says yes or no, you can move it and you have the option of going to a full study, or you can just cut bait right there and say, okay, this is good enough for me.
Are any of you getting, so we've got a couple different operating models out there at this point, right? You've got traditional, there's a property manager, some might even live on site if it still has the old apartment. You have the hub and spoke, or you have the truly remotely managed, there's a kiosk there, or the website is providing the rental, or there's some sort of variance there for them to rent. Are people asking you that to look at like these different scenarios? If maybe they're coming in and they go, oh, I don't know if I'm going to be self-managed, or if I'm going to use third-party management, or if I'm going to try to do as much automation as I can and make this remote. Like, are people asking that of you guys now?
Mm-hmm.
Sure.
Yeah. Okay.
They're learning a lot about all the different property management types at the shows through their state association and at the national shows. And while we do run some, we not fully remote. Obviously, somebody is on site some of the time. We do have a couple that are fully remote that we have taken over that way. But again, I think it goes to, they're looking at the cost. They're like, well, I can have a full management person and it'll cost this much, or I can do it remotely and it'll cost this much. But do you know self-storage?
Correct.
You cannot just you can't go, well, I have already spent $5 million to build this building, so now I'm just going to put a kiosk in and hope for the best. Well, do you know revenue management? Do you know how to generate your own business? Do you know how to fill up that facility? Because, the bank's not going to wait forever for the money, and you're probably not going to have interest only for that long. So, you have to weigh the options, and some people just don't think that way.
Yeah.
Yeah. And expanding on what Sarah said, that she's 100% correct. How you operate makes all the difference in the world. And if you do plan on, let's say, going into a market and putting it, let's say you want to do unmanned or automated, and all of a sudden you're going down the road, you only have so much of a term in your construction loan to get this done and either roll over or balloon out of it at certain, debt coverage ratios, things like that. If you make a mistake and you've blown 6 months, that really hurts. So, you really should plan for, probably the best case scenario with having a management company, having people there can advise you, people like Universal, myself, RK, we're going to see things and make changes much faster in the operations than you will, because we've just been doing it for so long. And that's why having, somebody at your side really, really helps.
Yeah. And you guys always can offer the service too. Like if they go in and they start self-managed and then they go, okay, this might not be for me, or I might need some assistance. You can come in and kind of look at their processes, right, Matt, and say, you're doing this good. This needs some fine tuning. We can shave some dollars here. We can increase some revenue here, right? So you've got that service as well.
Right. And you really want to, not just while you're doing it, you really want to start that process before you open, so you can have the baseline stuff already in there, because you just don't want to have to make so many changes as you're going through, because you may not have time.
Yeah. Yeah. Hey, what was it, RK? Time is the killer of all deals. Did you say that on Friday?
Yeah, that's one of my favorite sayings, and it's absolutely true. One of the things I think we also need to recognize is that you want that team in place ahead of time, very early on in the process, so that you can stay with the team all the way through, whether it be your architect or your management company. All of those decisions should be very early on in the process and made as you go through it. And again, there's always this tweaking that needs to go on because of the changes in the marketplace. One thing that's very dangerous, and I see it mainly in broker packages on listed properties, is that they'll put in a rate there, and they'll use that as their rate for setting what the rates might be at the subject property. Well, if you're using a point in time and they just went out and they found the extra space rate for that day, and it happens to be the street rate, not the web rate, sure, it looks really good on paper, but the chances of you actually getting that rate, because most people don't pay the street rate, most people pay the web rate. And so that can make a huge difference. It's how you compile that data and understanding it. The other thing is that a lot of banks require you to have a management company. They're not going to let you get out there in a $9 million facility and cowboy it yourself with no experience whatsoever. They want professional companies like USG and Matt and those guys to guide you through the process, because if you don't have that expertise, how do you know you can run a store?
It's true. Eric, or I'm sorry, Henry, do you guys have, do you self-manage or do you have someone running your property?
I have a manager. I have my office here. So, it just makes sense. She does, some other stuff for us. And, a lot of people that do come to us is on the Betco side of things. Hey, we want to build storage, and we talk them through the process, and then, hey, what is your plan for managing it? Oh, well, I didn't think about that. I'll probably just have the girl in my office do it. Well, does that girl have, or person have X amount of hours a week to go show units and tell them, hey, look, you're probably not going to get a car in a 10 by 15. Cause I can't tell you how many people come to my facility and say, hey, look, I want to park a car. I think I'm going to get a 10 by 15. So there's all those other little avenues. And while it's so important for that lease up period to have, somebody there at least, and, just to open the doors and just kind of get things flowing. Unmanned's great to kind of divert to that once you kind of get, the facility and open and all the bugs and kinks worked out. But until you get to that point, every phone call, every rental is very important in the first, 90, 100 days or so.
Yeah, absolutely critical for sure. Lou, answer this one for me. Eric is asking, what is hub and spoke? Can you explain what that term means in our world?
Yeah, so if you have one property that's kind of centrally located that you staff, and then you have multiple properties that are kind of spread out around, and so those are all kind of run unmanned remotely through this centralized office, as opposed to having somebody at each individual property itself.
Yep. Perfect. And when we had our portfolio, that's how we did it. And it works really well. It cuts down on labor costs for sure. So
it can. Yeah. Especially if you are geographically, lined up and these properties are very close, and
yeah, absolutely.
It works.
RK, I'll send this one over to you. What is different using US or using census data versus using Tract IQ?
Well, the census data is good because it gives you a baseline, but you have to remember the longer you are away from the census date. So, for example, we're using 2020 data today. When we get to 2029, anticipating the 2030 census data, that data is 9 years old. It is not current. And so you want to be able to use the most current data. And the census is really interesting because it gives you that one point in time. It's kind of like using point in time rates. It's great for them, but you need to really understand. They usually give you two others, an estimated and a projected. And the estimated is usually where it is, for example, the 2020 census, and then estimated would be 2023 because that's what their current estimate is. And then they give you a projected, which is usually 5 years ahead, which would be 2028 in this case. Mm-hmm. Well, just understand that when we get to 2028 and 2029 and they're predicting 2034, that's based on data they collected in 2020. And it's pretty stale and old data. The methodology that the demographers use becomes incredibly important. How did they get those estimates? And what data points did they use to gather it? And it's just a different methodology for each data provider to give that information.
Yeah, definitely. Good points. Eric's asking a question. We'll wrap up with this question, and then I have some announcements, and I want to play a video for the audience before we jump off here today. Eric is asking, how much time does a desktop study take versus the full-blown study? Like, what should people be expecting?
Well, go ahead. Our full-blown studies take a little bit longer only because we also do the design part. So we get estimated construction costs as well to put into your pro forma. So we're running 60 days, 45, 60 days, more like 60 days. And it's because we have to wait on other people outside, other vendors to give us some of the data to finish it up. We plan on about 60 days, and that's for the full blown study. Now the supply and demand part of it, typically we can get done in 30 days.
Okay. Matt, how about you guys?
Yeah, I mean, for the desk study, depending on when I started, of course, probably a week to 2 weeks just if I'm doing the desk study, pulling data electronically. Full-blown feasibility, after the visit, 2 weeks after that. So let's say 3 weeks, 4 weeks when I started.
Gotcha. RK?
I'm 15 business days for my desk study, and then an additional 16 business days for the full-blown site visit and carry on. One of the things I do is I go to both Extra Space and to CubeSmart, and I get budgets from them as though they were going to manage the store, and I compare those to my data. Again, I'm triangulating data. So I've got 3 different sources for me to look at and say, look, if you decide to go to CubeSmart, this is what the expectation would be for them to run the store. And that's how I get my expense projections, is I'm using the power of folks who have a lot more data than I do. And by doing that, I think I am able to give a better estimate of what that looks like. And it's usually very close between the Extra Space data and the CubeSmart data. It is so close sometimes, it's just unbelievable how they differ. The biggest difference is you can't get tenant insurance revenue from Extra Space, so they tend to be a little bit more aggressive on their revenue side of it to make up for that. But the numbers come out basically about the same in most cases.
Gotcha. Henry, does Becco or Janice offer feasibility studies, or is that not a service currently? You guys kind of just more take over once you see it so you can figure out the unit mix?
Yeah, no, we don't. I mean, we point them in the direction of, someone like Universal Storage Group or somebody that's what they do in feasibility study. It's we're building people. We know the building side of things. We can help lay it out. We can definitely build it. We kind of pass off the buck onto somebody, one of you professionals.
Awesome.
Jess,
all right, I'm gonna go ahead.
Real quick. Everybody that's listening, obviously you're learning from us, and you go to some of the big shows and you get all the online knowledge that you can get. But a lot of us have been on boards for our state associations, and it's an invaluable resource for you. Please, if you're looking to build, and even if you live somewhere and you're looking to build somewhere else, join your state association where you are and go to their meetings and learn from the other owners too, because, obviously we love our services and we're going to promote them, but the other owners that you meet and the other managers that you meet and so on, when you go to those meetings, will give you their honest opinions too.
100% agree with that. Would love to echo that. Heavily involved with the SSA. I sit on the board for Florida. I sit on the board for Michigan. And we do a lot with national. And we are huge proponents of joining your state level. And if you really want to maximize your industry knowledge and expertise, I would recommend going all the way to the national level for several $100s a year. It just, the benefits you get as a member are well worth. I mean, you're spending pennies on the dollar, literally, for what you get. So thank you everyone so much for being here today and taking time out of your schedule. Again, we cannot put these on without you guys. Just a couple quick announcements before we jump off here. We will not be back for Self-Storage Unlocked until May 11th. And on May 11th, we are going to talk about mystery shopping and internal audits and how that can help your self-storage property and your operational efficiencies. SBOA is now offering these as a service, and we are finding a lot of deficiencies in stores that we are shopping. In fact, all except one that we have shopped for free for fellow owners and out there that we know have unfortunately failed. So I think with people being a little bit more cognizant on prices these days, customer service is going to come back into a critical piece. So this is something that you should be evaluating. So we'll be talking all about internal audits and mystery shopping on the 11th. May 4th, we are back for Storage for Rookies. If you are a new owner and operator looking to get into this wonderful industry, Storage for Rookies is a 5-hour virtual event where you can dip your toe in the water and see if this industry is for you or not. We give you just enough for you to go, okay, this is something I want to explore. So if you're interested in that program, you can check out storageforrookies.com. You can sign up for the May 4th event on the website, and it is a recorded event. If you do register and pay for the ticket, you get a copy of the recording that you can, refer back to. So, and if any of our audience has any suggested topics, areas that they need help with, please email in those suggestions to us. We would love to hear from our viewers what you want us to cover. You can send it to info@the SBOA, or you can send it to Jessica at the SBOA. Get in touch with us. And a couple shows that we will be at coming up. And you guys, if any of you are at these upcoming shows, raise your hand as well. So on the 24th, we'll be up in Bay City for the Self Storage Association of Michigan's Owners Summit that they're having in Bay City on Monday. They did have one scheduled for Traverse City on the 25th, but that one unfortunately was postponed. But again, you can come to Bay City this Monday. April 26th and 27th, we are at the Missouri show. Anybody going to Missouri? No? Okay. I'm road warring by myself then. Then we have May 18th and 19th, the Mid-Atlantic Conference in DC. Anyone going to that one? All right. I see.
Lou and Ann are speaking at that one.
Awesome.
No, we're speaking at the Northeast.
Oh, my bad.
Yeah, first week in May. I think Stacy and Ann maybe are both speaking actually, they might both be speaking at the Mid-Atlantic.
Yeah, I'm Stacy speaking at Mid-Atlantic because she's on a marketing panel with me. So we'll be there. And then again, please follow the SBOA on social media. We're on Facebook, LinkedIn, Twitter, YouTube, Instagram, and we now have TikTok. We don't have any content on TikTok yet. My little creative mastermind, Iris, and I are over here figuring out what we'll be doing on TikTok. But anyone that doesn't like TikTok, I'm just going to lay this out here. It's getting more SEO searches than Google currently. So please don't ignore TikTok. It's going to become relevant if it stays allowable in the United States. I think there's like Montana's trying to shut it down.
It'll be.
Oh no, I've lost her. She froze.
I think she's about to say, it'll be fine.
It'll be fine.
Okay.
It was all part of her TikTok.
The dramatic pause.
Yeah.
Awesome. Well, again, we're going to play a couple of videos before we leave. Thank you.
Oh, where'd our moderator go? Oh boy, folks, you're stuck with us. Big trouble.
Iris, how do you love videos?
I'm not sure where Jessica went, but we do want to thank everybody for coming today. We are going to play a couple of videos, just let you know what Betco does, a little something from Universal Storage Group. And there's Jessica back. And then we're going to play a little mystery shopping video for you guys.
Thank you all.
Thanks,
For
everyone.
having us.
Bye, everyone. Thank you.
There's multitasking, then there's multi-tasking. When it comes to designing, manufacturing, and installing self-storage buildings, no one beats Betco. We construct skillfully designed buildings in all shapes and sizes, one custom component at a time. Whatever building component you need, Betco will provide, all under one roof, including the roof itself. You take care of the slab, and we'll do everything else. Single story, not a problem. Multi-story with climate control, we've got you covered. Turning retail space into boat and RV storage. We're doing it all across the country. leaving thrilled developers in our wake and would-be competitors in the dust. That's because Betco provides more. More support, more resources, more solutions. And the options, they're downright unlimited. This isn't our first rodeo, you know. We've been in this business since 1984. Back then, our goal was to be the premier mini storage manufacturer in the industry. But it wasn't long before ambition got the best of us, meaning we began pouring our very best ideas, best talent, resources, and industrial strength energy into something bigger. Being a total solutions provider that delivers everything a self-storage facility owner needs to be successful. We've gained a whole lot of expertise achieving that dream. Even so, we've never slacked off on being the best and never let up on quality, effort, and improvement. Whether challenges call for hard muscle labor or brilliant innovation, nothing stops Betco. We're meticulous, start to finish. That goes for consulting and planning, drafting and design, manufacturing and technology, building, installing, even eye appeal. And when it's time to expand or renovate, Betco makes the process simpler and cost-effective. Your potential is limitless. Start living up to it. Work with a proven partner. Choose the company that's up to all the tasks. Go with Betco.
Do you ever think about your future and where you'd like to spend the most time as you get older? And the most important question that comes to you is, how can I get there? If you're seeing this video, then likely you've heard about what a great investment self-storage can be, so you start looking into it. You spend hours learning about self-storage and you start to glean some great advice, but also you identify some major issues and questions that you need to answer. If you're brand new to this industry, you may be hearing and seeing so much information that you're feeling confused, frustrated, and maybe even ready to pull your hair out. Well, let Universal Storage Group help you navigate these waters to help fund your future paradise. Though we recently unveiled our new branding and look, Universal has been around for over 30 years, providing fewer headaches and higher income to our clients, trust and peace of mind to our storage customers, and education and improved quality of life to our amazing team members. Our services include award-winning full-service management, award-winning consulting services, award-winning manager and owner training, and award-winning developmental services and feasibility studies. When we say what we do for you, we really mean it. At Universal, we are a family looking out for one another from the bottom up. We feel that being the biggest has never really been our goal, but being the best, well, that's what drives every member of our team. With Universal, you just get more. Check us out online at universalstoragemanagement.com or reach out directly by emailing sales@universalstoragegroup.com. We're ready when you are, because what we do for you.
Thank you for calling self-storage. This is how may I help you?
Yeah, and do you guys have any storage available, spots available?
You said you're looking for a parking space?
No, I need some storage. I'm moving to town, and I need to put my house in there, or my apartment, I guess I should say.
Okay, absolutely. Are you looking for an air-conditioned unit or a non-climate?
I think non-climate. I don't think anything in there is probably that, sensitive.
All right, and so with that, our non-climate units with the drive-up access, we have the largest being 10 by 35s, and then down from that we have 10 by 30s, 10 by 20s, and 10 by 15.
Yeah, maybe a 10 by 15. I mean, it's actually a 10 by 20.
A 10 by 20? All right, and those are starting at $269 base.
Okay, thank you very much.
You're welcome. Have a great day.
You too.